If for whatever reason you haven't been following the current anime season, then you might be surprised to hear that ZOM 100 Bucket List of the Dead has been indefinitely delayed. However, for those who have been watching anime regularly or keeping up with anime news in recent years, news like this should no longer come as a surprise. ZOM 100 Bucket List of the Dead is itself just the latest in a long line of shows that have seemingly run into production problems that have either put shows on pause for a single week or caused things to stall out for extended periods of time before finally, at last, getting back into the swing of things and ending proper. It has become so common that anime fans, at least on the immediate surface, seem to be wising up to a reality that animators, commenters, and insiders have been noticing, experiencing, and saying for a while. The state of the industry now is in dire straits. For lack of a better term, the age of delays is the present state of the industry, and there is little reason to believe that things will show any sign of getting better. If anything, the overall sentiment is that things are only going to keep getting worse. So let's talk for a minute about recent delays in anime and what might be a couple of factors that go into causing these problems to take place. If you've never really thought about the animation process, some of this might be a little surprising, but it's worth at least bringing attention to it because the more we become aware of this, the more we'll understand just what is happening. For one thing, we need to make it clear that a production can run into problems of all sorts, and that there is no one singular unifying factor that goes into all delays all the time. In the middle of South Park's 17th season, the episode Goth Kids 3 Dawn of the Posers was delayed for an entire week because the power went out at South Park Studios in Los Angeles, making it the first time that the show was not able to meet a production deadline. Considering that it takes approximately 6 days with little advanced preparation to make an episode of South Park, that's honestly something commendable for all the people who are involved. Sometimes a project is delayed indefinitely or cancelled because the main creative force behind it passes away, as was the case of Kon Satoshi's Dreaming Machine, which, despite Maruyama Masao's attempts to try and complete it for the longest time, has still never seen any kind of true release since, according to him, it wouldn't be a Kon film without Kon himself directing it, since his sense of art and vision was so unique. Others like the Shaman King remake got delayed because of television scheduling conflicts. In that show's case, it clashed with the Olympics. But in the more contemporary age of anime, if there was one show that really seemed to open the door to just how intense and insane some anime productions could get, it was Wonder Egg Priority. The community that had come to be invested in that show seemed to collectively deflate after it dawned that episode 8 was going to be a recap, putting a major damper on one of the more thematically and aesthetically interesting shows of that year. There are several reasons for why Wonder Egg Priority got saddled with problems, including an alleged clashing between the writer, director, and producer all having disagreements about the way the show's story should progress and how much they should lean into certain themes. But with the little bits of information that have come to light, it goes to show just how chaotic the production had become and how badly the creative forces involved desperately tried to keep it all together with duct tape. Unfortunately, whoever was in charge of production organization at Cloverworks didn't seem to learn their lesson either, considering that another show from them in the winter of 2022, Tokyo's 24th Ward, was also beset with production problems. And this is not a Cloverworks-centric problem either. Studio Shaft in 2022 had production issues with RWBY Ice Queendom, including a moment where RWBY just disappears completely in episode 11 for a couple of frames, and League of Nations Air Force Aviation magic band Luminous Witches, which, yes, that is the full English name of the show, and I did in fact see it, Moffy Supremacy for all the people who also saw it, another show that needed to have a recap episode to fill in a gap of time. Mobile Suit Gundam, The Witch from Mercury, was delayed numerous times, both for scheduling conflicts and for behind-the-scenes production problems. And that's not even going into all the others, like Isekai Oji-san, Unite Up, Kubo-san Won't Let Me Be Invisible, Spy Classroom Season 1, and Aono Orchestra, which is currently entering its final episodes but was delayed for a whole month. But among the relatively recent delays besides ZOM 100 Bucket List of the Dead, there was one show that seemed to shine an even bigger light on things, or at least illuminate the prevalence of the issue. When it was announced that Nier Automata version 1.1a was going to be delayed because of COVID-19, including at one point going to indefinite hiatus that wouldn't be clarified for a few months, nearly everyone within the anime community took a look at these announcements and just rolled their eyes, at least among the people watching the show. And let's not kid ourselves, COVID did absolutely make some things harder for just about everyone in the entertainment industry, and the uncertainty of not knowing how long it was going to last for, or just how infectious it could be, definitely caused some justifiable alarm. However, that excuse has long burned through its goodwill, and fans were openly speculating on just what was going on with either Studio A1 or Aniplex as a producer. The reality, however, is that while we might tout anime's artistic capabilities, animation is not just an art form. It's a business and capitalism just like any other, and since entertainment companies need to continuously produce new content in order to make money, the machine cannot afford any hiccups in the process that stop the money from coming in. The irony is that, in trying to prevent exactly that with tighter production schedules, the results come in the form of harsher workplace conditions and pay, harsher treatment of staff, and the increased number of productions. The overall quality of products both on screen and behind the scenes starts gradually declining. It's now gotten to the point where some people I know who only just got into anime are sincerely asking, has it always been this bad? And the answer is that it hasn't been. Productions that have been hit with problems or major changes that necessitated a shift are nothing new. Rose of Versailles had Tazaki Osamu come in as director at about the halfway point, and the original run for Mobile Suit Gundam was cancelled earlier than expected due to low ratings, and both of those took place for shows that started in 1979. But the problem with looking back at the history of the medium is that it's easier to chalk up moments like these to individual productions rather than larger, more systemic issues. And especially considering that some companies are starting to crack the whip even harder in order to keep particular information confidential or behind closed doors, it becomes less and less able to not have an inherently cynical perspective on any show that starts off with a good production and not worry that it might implode later. The sad reality is that, contrary to what some might think, the length of time for an anime production is not terribly long. After the initial production meeting and planning periods, from the first time that the notes are sent out to the key animators, both in-house and freelance, there are only about 6 to 8 months to create an anime, but leaning closer towards 6 months total. While that might seem like plenty of time to make a 12-episode core, the amount of communication that has to occur between sending materials to the key animators, waiting for them to finish, sending off the drafted key animations, hearing back from the producers about key animation corrections, fixing those corrections, adding in the color and the background art, the compositing, the sound mixing, etc. It's a long process to make a single episode of something. Animation is not easy to make well, especially for productions that have particularly bonkers comedic styles like Bocchi the Rock, intensive action sequences like Mob Psycho 100, and the like. The time needed might be even longer. This is part of the reason why industry insiders or news sources sometimes have to go out of their way to announce that an animation production has actually finished all of its episodes in advance for a one-core show, because it is actually an increasingly rare occurrence for everything to be completed before the anime starts airing. Times like these are the exception, not the rule. You know how some people complain about DLC being released to patch up problems with a video game after it has been released? Anime productions are increasingly becoming akin to waiting until the absolute last possible second in the hope that you don't think you need to wait for the DLC to be released in order for the thing to work properly. And all the while, the people in the credits are desperately trying to create something that people will like. This is also part of the reason why productions like Heavenly Delusion need to be praised when they manage to stick the landing effectively. In the case of that show specifically, Heavenly Delusion was actually supposed to air a full year earlier than it did, and part of the reason why it looked so cohesively put together was because the staff managed to take that extra time and add more polish and make it even more aesthetically presentable. Even among the few people I know who did not like Heavenly Delusion, the one consistent praise that they were giving it was its aesthetic presentation, beautifully realized in its many facets, including the actual animations, backgrounds, and storyboarding, and battle choreography. There's another reason, however, for the lack of solid productions, and it's the lack of systems in place for animators to be able to take younger animators or directors under their wing and teach them about how to structure storyboards, sequences, and all the innumerable aspects that go into a production. Sakuga Blog actually posted about this problem a short time ago, remarking that the inability for older generations to mentor younger ones is rooted in several other smaller industry realities. These include, but are not limited to, the fragmentation of the production process, the shortcutting of techniques by increasingly relying on CGI, poor or otherwise, and putting webgen animators in the fast lane without giving them time to ease into the process of how to make something work. Even if these changes have supposedly eased the day-to-day grind, the larger scale picture of the industry is that it is constantly choking those who seek to enterprise in it, and thus harms the inherent creative energy and pulse in a production. Therefore, more breakdowns in the pipeline occur, and more delays take place. This allows me to actually take a quick minute to dispel a common complaint that is sometimes levied against anime with either bad visuals or bad productions in general. You'll sometimes hear that the animators didn't care. Far from it. If they truly didn't care, they wouldn't keep working in an industry that seems to actively bleed them dry. It's not a case of the animators not caring. It's that they're trying the best they can under circumstances most of us would never want to experience for ourselves. Hence why the Kyoto Animation School is considered such an integral part of the studio, and why it's the poster child for an industry standard of mentorship and excellence that seems to no longer exist. The people who go through the art program, while it's true that they primarily learn how to draw in the distinct KyoAni style, are also taught the various aspects of creating art pieces and drawing. You cannot become an episode director or a unit director without first being a key animator, or an in-betweener, or a colorist, and learning exactly what that means from step A to step Z, or step Z for those of you who don't live in the United States. Many of the staff members in its history have a long resume of assuming many different roles for their varied shows, which demonstrates a fluidity and easiness of being able to find capable people filling in any gaps that might be needed. Because their industry is so tightly knit, they can quickly call on someone for something important, like Sato Tatsuya, who did the famous Running on the Water sequence from Violet Evergarden, and they don't need to go very far in order to get what they need accomplished. If media survives through instruction from masters to pupil, if there is no way for the masters to teach the pupils, we shouldn't be surprised if there are no more pupils remaining for the masters to teach, or if the knowledge the masters have dies with them. Moving beyond Kyoto Animation, Sato Junichi mentored Ikuhara Kunihiko on assistant directing for things like Mapletown Monogatari and Sailor Moon, who would then go on to create Revolutionary Girl Utena and Mamoru Penguin Drum, and in the process, mentor Furukawa Tomohiro, which is why Review Starlight looks and acts the way that it does. Without mentorship and the increased prevalence of shortcutting the animation process to the point of uninspired backgrounds, character designs, storyboards, and other matters, productions are not only susceptible to being more bland than they might have been otherwise, but they're also more likely to become delayed. The industry as it stands now is poised more than ever to go over the precipice and fall off the metaphorical cliff. And while I don't think it's ever going to actually go over the edge, it's teetering to the point where even casual anime fans are starting to wake up and take notice. News about delays, whether 1 week or longer, just simply don't surprise me anymore. And that's part of the reason why I am praying with all my soul that Frieren, Beyond Journey's End, does not meet a similar fate. So, what can we do about this? Well, that's just the problem. There isn't really an immediate quick fix. People are just not going to collectively decide to stop watching anime with bad productions, though that might possibly help, and studios are not going to all of a sudden decide that they should treat their staff better or cut down on the number of shows or increase production times, no matter how much of a ruckus is made. What we can do are a few simple things to try and at least let them know that we care and are aware. For one, try to find artists whose animation work you admire and try supporting them directly. If you see a cut from a show that you particularly like, peruse Sakugaboro and see if it's there, and see if you can find out who made it. If they have commissions, art books, or Ko-fi pages, consider giving them patronage to supplement the meager salary that studios provide them. Try and do it through their official websites if possible to avoid third-party vendors. Also, stay up to date on any announcements or updates pertaining to delays. Spread that news around if it's credible enough, and help make the public more consciously aware of what is happening. We do indeed live in the age of delays, and even if we cannot ourselves end the age proper, or if the industry itself is indeed headed to a kind of nuclear winter or stoppage, we owe it to the people who make the media we care about so much to understand what's going on. The anime industry juggernaut has been going with nothing to stop it, but all it can do now is try and delay its end for another season. Until then, it relentlessly marches along, and hopefully there won't be anything more to worry about. Oh, for the love of... Thank you for watching. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, join Discord, follow socials, or donate to my Patreon, and don't forget to hit the bell for notifications. In the meantime, this has been ZNote of ZNoteTaku. Happy viewing, everyone!